the other guard play. Look, Tyrese Maxey is Tyrese Maxey.
Well, I think we do want to talk about Tyrese.
No,
I think there was a pretty significant.
I'm just pointing it out that the guy was good, man. He just right away gets out there, and it was like, okay, Tyrese Maxey's in. He's ready to play. He came up ready to play. He was prepared to get things going, and he was really good in that in that run. So we also have a video that Kyle you wanted to look at. Derek, of course, we jump in there also, but he was so good. His outside shooting, the one drive that you and I talked about pregame, Rich and I and Bree, we were sitting there, and I said, "Oh,
thought he was gonna punch one."
Yeah, it was. Oh, I love the left hand finish on the right side, and we've talked so much about some other finishing.
The Blue Chew ad? No.
That too. Even though Darkness said the Sixers were so good last night, he didn't need it. Look, Tyrese played really, really well, and we can run this video also of how Tyrese Maxey looked, the 15 points in the 12 minutes that he played. Certainly didn't have to come back on the floor.
Yeah, so the big thing, which is what jumped out at me, was the shot release, because that, to my eye, looks like a quicker release from him on basically all these shots that he took. And watching in real time, there was part of me that was like, well, he's being guarded by a guy who's like 5'9".
He had no worries rising up and trying to shoot
so you can have it up in front of you a little bit more and not have to worry about that if you're him. But there are a couple of these shots, like I believe the one where he comes off a dribble handoff, or there's some kind of baseline out of bounds play, and Yabusele sets a screen for him, where there's a second defender there who's a lot bigger than Parker Jackson Cartwright. And Tyrese is still rising up for him a quicker release point on his shot. And I don't want to read too much into it. And
that's the one right there.
That's another one right there. If he can get his shot off quicker and he's hitting it at a high level. Now, this is what I'm talking about here.
Right.
He comes off of the Yabusele screen, big man steps, and that's still a relatively compact release from him, which is not to say in the past that he's been a slow shooter.
No.
It's just when we are scrutinizing someone like him as much as we do, you pick up on things like that, like, oh, that looks a little bit different. And I went back and watched some old ones, and that cut some time down, and that's coming off of his wrist a little bit differently. Do I want Tyrese reinventing the wheel when he is such a good shooter as it is? No, but I thought that was noteworthy as we go into the season to see what kind of impact does that have. Is he going to come down the floor and start taking regularly those Dame Lillard type pull-up threes where it's, you're 35 feet out, and it's like, if you're dropping, I'm pulling up because he's confident.
And that's where I was going to go and say it looked like Damian Lillard. That release, that range, watching your videos from pregame stuff that he was doing and taking those logo shots and making the one, of course, against New York in Game 5 in a big, big money spot. It looked like Dame Lillard now with that type of quick release for what he's doing.
Yeah. And look, so if I'm looking at Tyrese, of the top 4 things I would look for him to improve upon, the quickness of the release probably isn't in there, just because the other weaknesses, like the passing and improvement there, would have such a drastic impact. The defense, obviously, we can talk about. Yeah, probably foul drawing is up there. All right, so maybe quickness of the release is 4th. But it isn't an inconsequential thing either. Like I think we look at some of the other things, and they're important because they're his main limitations. But if he can make his main strength even more pronounced and even more of a weapon, especially when you talk about that 2-man game with Embiid, any split second you can cut down on that would be huge. I do sort of have to see it against like an NBA team a little bit. Like, we'll see. And to your point, like not all of them came against Jackson Cartwright, but chunk of them did, and he certainly had no worries, pulling up and rising above him because he was not getting that shot block.
But see, the other impressive part about it is it's off the dribble. It's all off the dribble where you got to gather. You got to feel the seams, how you like them to get that going and get that shot off. And the other impressive part, naturally, as a right-hand guy, you'd like to go left. And when you go left, the gather is easier because you're bringing the basketball up with your guide hand to shoot it. But when you're doing so and going to the right, with the shooting hand and still having to gather and make sure you get a good feel with your guide hand and get that shot off quickly as he does, that's really impressive for a guy that we've seen him improve every single year. So we're not worried about it. As you said, it's not anything that's inconsequential. It's just a matter of we know he's going to get better because he always does it. We know he's in the gym working on these things, probably against some pros too. To your point, it's just not an NBA game action. But for him to do so, and especially going right, where it's always harder, it's always tougher to get that natural shot going because of the guide hand having to be right and get the seams correctly with that now quick release. That's really, really impressive for him to do so with the defense, scouting him to take that away now.
I mean, look, he is one of the best shooters in the world. Just point blank, period. That's
crazy to say for all the
say,
scouting, of course, coming out of the draft that people had about that.
One thing Derek brought up that I think is really important. If you're talking about in the actions with Joel Embiid, when they're running those quick combination dribble handoffs, whether it's a quarter of a second, half a second, whatever it might be, that can make an enormous difference. That's the difference between, the big who's trying to contain Joel being able to get a credible contest in there, or Tyrese getting a clean shooting window. And if he has a cleaner shooting window, we believe in the talent and the skill enough that he's going to make more of those than he's probably going to miss. So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily buying or selling this yet. It's, again, I agree with Derek on the sample, right? It's a game against a pretty low level of competition relative to what he's going to face in the NBA.
All due respect, Matt.
Yeah. I love Matt Walsh, friend of the program now. They're the NBL. It's the NBA. He gets all that. But if we start to see this throughout the rest of the preseason, that's not an insignificant detail. So we'll see.
It's a good thing to have in the bag there as you improve as a player looking to win a championship, especially with the talent that you have around.
We all silly like the mayor.